Aliens attacked a peaceful human farm. Big mistake. The twin sons of Helios Prime, one a brilliant gold and the other a soft, pale rose, crested the emerald hills of New Eden. Their blended light washed over the valley, catching the dew on the broad leaves of Jupiter corn and painting the fields in hues of honey and wine. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, the sweet perfume of alien blossoms, and the faint, loamy aroma of the fungal groves. From the pastures below, the gentle lowing of groks, six-legged beasts with shaggy, earth-toned hides, echoed in the morning calm. It was a symphony of peace, composed note by perfect note every day. Colonel Maria Santos, known to all on New Eden simply as Maria, knelt in the rich, dark soil of her personal garden. Her hands, calloused and strong, gently prodded the base of a tomato vine, its Terran native fruit hanging like crimson jewels. A genuine smile touched her lips. After a lifetime of sterile starship decks and the grit of a dozen worlds under assault, the simple, profound reality of soil beneath her fingernails was a luxury beyond price. She hummed a tuneless, contented melody as she plucked a particularly ripe tomato, its skin warm from the rising suns. Straightening up, she stretched her back with a soft groan, a gesture of comfortable age, not of injury. Her gaze drifted across her small homestead to the simple, rustic cottage she called home. Atop its roof, a polished brass weathercock spun lazily in the morning breeze. It was a beautiful piece of art, intricate and old-fashioned. To anyone else, it was a charming ornament. Maria's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. She tapped a nearly invisible stud on the worn leather cuff of her work glove. Her vision, for an instant, shimmered. A faint, translucent overlay of data scrolled across her left eye. Long-range array, nominal. Subspace chatter, background levels stable. Sector 7 drone sweep, clear. Thermal signatures consistent with indigenous fauna. The tactical analysis was as automatic as breathing, a ghost of the mind she used to be. The part of her that could calculate kill zones and orbital trajectories assessed the data in a nanosecond, filed it, and dismissed it. The overlay vanished. The weathercock was just a weathercock again. She let out a long, slow breath, the sigh of a farmer pleased with the prospect of a good day's work. In the distance, the low rumble of an engine broke the pastoral silence. It was Tommy Chen, firing up one of the colony's massive harvesters. The machine, a Deer Hindustan 9000, looked absurdly powerful for tilling fields. Its chassis was a little too thick, its lines a little too aggressive, and the composite plating on its flanks shimmered with a hardness that no mere rock or stump could ever justify. Maria watched him go, a true fondness in her eyes. This place, this fragile piece, was everything. It was a garden they had all planted, not just in the soil but in their very souls, and she would let nothing ever uproot it. Aboard the Ravager scout ship Gutripper, the bridge was a cacophony of guttural clicks and harsh, metallic groans. The air hung thick with the scent of ozone and recycled protein paste. Unlike the sleek, sterile bridges of the Human Federation, this was a place of brutal function, all jagged angles and unpolished durasteel, built for war and little else. From his command throne of fused bone and scavenged alloys, Captain Vexter watched the target world resolve on the main viewer. His 4 obsidian eyes blinked in slow succession, and a low growl rumbled in his chitinous chest. "Report," he rasped, his mandibles clicking impatiently. The comms officer, a lankier member of his species named Krieg, swiveled in his chair. "Sensors confirm, Captain. A primitive agrarian colony, pre-Federation tech signatures, minimal energy output consistent with solar and fusion generators. No orbital defenses detected, no fleet signatures, no planetary shield emissions." Krieg gestured with a 3-fingered hand at a data stream. "Biomass readings are off the charts. Rich soil, plentiful water, and a population of soft targets." Vexter leaned forward, a cruel approximation of a smile spreading across his gray, segmented face. He had built his reputation on raids like this, on breaking the backs of soft, undefended worlds and feasting on their resources. This one, named New Eden according to the intercepted nav beacon, was almost too perfect. Slaves. Approximately 200 biologicals, Captain. Human stock. They appear healthy. Excellent, Vexter rumbled, the sound like rocks grinding together. Inform the fleet. We will make our approach under cover of the smaller moon. A quick, overwhelming strike. Let the heavy transports land first to secure the livestock and produce. The warriors can have their sport with the colonists after the primary assets are loaded. Tell them to be thorough. I want their grain silos, their breeding stock, and their hope. He settled back into his throne, already tasting victory. The thought of these pathetic farmers cowering before his might was a pleasant one. It would be a trivial, profitable day. The brass weathercock on Maria's roof suddenly spun a full 360 degrees against the wind, then pointed due east. It was the softest of alarms, utterly silent, but to Maria it screamed louder than any klaxon. She was standing by her water pump, and for a full second she went still. The friendly, easy posture of the farmer vanished, replaced by the rigid economy of motion of a commander assessing a threat. Warning: unidentified fleet Ravager signature. Vector, in system. ETA 47 standard minutes. 47 minutes. She tapped her cuff again, sending a single, coded pulse to every colonist's personal communicator. The pulse resonated as a high-frequency chirp, masked as the call of a local bird species. Across the valley, the rhythm of work didn't falter, but a new current of purpose ran beneath it. Maria strode briskly toward the community hall, the largest building in the settlement, its timber frame looking like a centuries-old barn. She rang the heavy iron bell hanging by the door 3 times, a sharp, resonant clang that echoed across the fields, the signal for an emergency harvest meeting. Within 5 minutes the hall was full. Men and women, their faces weathered by the suns, their clothes smudged with dirt, filed in and took their seats on simple wooden benches. They looked like concerned farmers gathering to discuss a blight or an early frost. Maria stood before them, her expression grave. "Morning, everyone," she said, her voice calm and even. "Got a bit of a situation. The long-range sensors are picking up a significant migratory pest flock, Ravager species." A low murmur went through the crowd, but there was no panic. Tommy Chin, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, spoke up from the front row. "How bad a swarm are we talking, Maria?" "A big one, Tommy. Looks like they're planning on stripping the fields bare. We're going to need to initiate immediate pest control protocols. Full spectrum." Her eyes swept the room, meeting the gaze of her section leaders. "That means an early harvest, effective immediately." The coded language flowed easily, a script they had rehearsed 100 times. "Dr. Kim," Maria said, turning to a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and silver-streaked hair. "Sarah Kim, their resident botanist. I need your pollinators prepped for a targeted release. Focus on the landing zones we designated in the North Pasture. I want them to find the local flora exceptionally unwelcoming." Sarah nodded, her face a mask of clinical focus. "The Viper's Kiss pollen is at peak potency. Cross-contamination with the choking vine spores should prove inhospitable. I'll prime the dispersal units." "Good," Maria turned back to Tommy. "Your combines, are they ready to till the tough stalks?" Tommy's haunted eyes held a flicker of grim satisfaction. "The Deer Hindustan 9000s have been calibrated and fueled, Maria. Engines are purring. They'll chew through anything that gets in their way." "Everyone else," Maria continued, her voice hardening almost imperceptibly, "you know your duties. Secure the fields. Check the fences full power. We want to keep the vermin contained. Standard scarecrow protocols. Let's get to it. We need to present a picture of a quiet, peaceful farm right up until the last possible moment." The colonists rose and dispersed without another word, moving with a quiet efficiency that belied their rustic appearance. Outside, a man who tended the Grok's herds began adjusting a series of what looked like automated feeding troughs, his fingers flying across control panels hidden beneath their lids. In the cornfields, a woman who looked like she was checking irrigation levels was actually calibrating the targeting sensors on a pop-up turret, its sleek barrel hidden perfectly amongst the thick stalks. The entire valley was a weapon, and it was waking up. 20 minutes later, the hail came. A jagged Ravager sigil appeared on the comm screen in the community hall's office. Maria took a deep breath, consciously slumping her shoulders and letting a look of weary confusion settle on her face. She smudged a bit of dirt on her cheek and ran a hand through her hair to muss it. She pressed the accept icon. The face of a Ravager scout filled the screen, its mandibles twitching with arrogant impatience. "This is the Ravager vessel Naw. You are trespassing in our territory. Identify yourselves." Maria widened her eyes, playing the part of a terrified civilian perfectly. "Trespassing? I don't understand. We're just farmers. My name is Maria Santos. I'm the head of this colony. New Eden." Her voice trembled slightly. "We're a peaceful settlement. We mean no harm." The Ravager's derisive clicking was audible over the comm. "You are human. Your existence is harm. Your colony is rich in resources. We claim them. Your lives are forfeit." Maria put a hand to her chest, her expression one of utter despair. "Please," she begged, allowing a tear to well in her eye. "Please, we have nothing of value, just our crops, our homes. We're simple people. We have children here. Please leave us in peace." The Ravager stared at her for a long moment, its alien mind processing the pathetic display. It saw exactly what it expected to see, a weak, sniveling creature, ripe for conquest. "Your pleas are meaningless, human," the scout sneered and cut the transmission. Aboard the gut tripper, Krieg turned back to his captain. "Confirmed, Captain Vexter. They are leaderless and terrified. Their leader was practically weeping. They believe themselves to be nothing more than farmers." Vexter's laughter was a harsh, scraping sound that echoed across the bridge. "Farmers," he spat. "Excellent, let them weep. Launch the first wave, let the harvest begin." The sky over New Eden darkened, not with clouds but with the hulking, brutalist shapes of the Ravager fleet descending from orbit. They blotted out the twin suns, casting the verdant valley into an ominous twilight. The lead ship, Vexter's flagship Worldbreaker, was a jagged mountain of gunmetal gray, bristling with weapon emplacements. Its shadow fell over the colony like a death sentence. A system-wide broadcast crackled to life, Vexter's rasping voice amplified to a planetary roar. "People of New Eden, I am Vexter of the Ravager fleet. Your world is ours. Your lives are ours. Surrender now. Place all your harvests, your livestock, and yourselves in the Central Plaza for processing. Resistance is pointless. Obey, and some of you may be spared to serve. Defy US, and your world will be sterilized to the bedrock." Inside her cottage, now humming with the low thrum of a fully active command center, Maria stood before a holographic display showing the disposition of the enemy fleet. Tactical overlays painted trajectories and potential landing zones in crimson light. Colonists, now clad in lightweight body armor beneath their farm clothes, moved with purpose, their voices crisp and clear over the internal comms. "Grid defenses are green, Colonel. Biodispersal units are primed and awaiting your command. Scarecrow drones report 100% combat readiness." Maria keyed her comm, her voice once again adopting the persona of the frightened farmer. It was projected colony-wide, a desperate plea broadcast into the encroaching darkness. "Captain Vexter, please, we are complying. We're just simple people. We don't move very fast. Please give us time to gather everyone. We don't want any trouble." She was stalling, buying precious seconds. On the holo display, she watched the first wave of Ravager dropships and heavy transports detach from the fleet, their paths converging on the northern pastures, the designated kill box. "Tommy," she said into her private comlink, her voice dropping the facade, becoming as cold and hard as steel. "Status." From his workshop, surrounded by humming power conduits and glowing diagnostic screens, Tommy Chen grinned. "All systems online, Colonel. The fields are ready for plowing." "Dr. Kim." "The garden is eager to meet our guests, Colonel," Sarah Kim replied from her biolab, her gaze fixed on a monitor displaying the vital signs of her crops. "The pollinators are on the wind." Maria watched the lead dropship breach the upper atmosphere. "All right, people," she murmured, more to herself than anyone. "Let's get to work." To Vexter, her broadcast voice continued to plead, "Please, sir, our children are frightened, just a few more moments." "Your time is up, farmer," Vexter's voice boomed back, cutting her off. Maria smiled a thin, grim smile. "Copy that." She switched her comms to the command channel. Her voice was pure ice. "Tommy, execute Iron Harvest, now." In his workshop, Tommy slammed a large, red button protected by a reinforced cover. "Let's see how they like this year's crop," he whispered, a fierce, protective joy lighting his tired eyes. Across the valley, the transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. The long, spindly arms of the central pivot irrigation systems, which had watered the Jupiter corn for years, suddenly telescoped upwards. Their nozzles split open, revealing the dark, multifaceted lenses of plasma cannons and the warhead tips of surface-to-air missiles. The quaint, rustic-looking grain silo near the community hall groaned, and massive steel panels slid apart with the hiss of hydraulics, unveiling the colossal, gleaming dish of a directed energy weapon. It began to hum, gathering a blinding blue-white energy at its core. Out in the fields, the hulking Deer Hindustan 9000 harvesters whirred to life. Their combines retracted, their wheels shifted, and armored plates slid into place. Weapons pods emerged from their chassis, transforming the farm machines into heavily armed, quadrupedal combat mechs, the Scarecrow drones. They rose from the cornfields like vengeful gods of the harvest, their optical sensors glowing a malevolent red. The energy spike was massive. On the bridge of the World Breaker, alarms shrieked. "Captain," Krieg yelled, his mandibles chattering in alarm. "Massive energy readings from the surface. Their weapons grade, hundreds of them." Before Vexter could process the report, the valley erupted. Plasma bolts, white-hot and brilliant, streaked into the sky. Missiles, trailing smoke, screamed upwards. The lead Ravager dropship, its pilot expecting nothing more than ground fire, was caught in a crossfire of unimaginable intensity. Its shields flickered and died. A plasma bolt tore through its port engine, and a volley of missiles ripped its fuselage in half. The ship blossomed into a fiery orange flower in the twilight sky, raining wreckage onto the fields below. As the troop transports descended lower, trying to evade the anti-air fire, the second trap was sprung. "Dr. Kim," Maria said calmly, "release." In her lab, Sarah Kim tapped a sequence on her console. "The garden is in bloom." On the ground, what the Ravagers had identified as thick, stubborn native vines suddenly writhed to life. As strong and flexible as carbon nanotubes, they shot up from the soil, wrapping around the landing gear and engines of the descending transports. One transport, snared by a dozen vines, was dragged from the sky and slammed into the earth with a ground-shaking crash. The fields of enormous, sun-facing flowers that the Ravagers had marked as a potential food source swiveled in unison. Their cheerful yellow heads tracked the low-flying assault craft. With a sound like 1,000 whips cracking, they fired coordinated volleys of razor-sharp thorns, each one a hardened biological flechette. They shredded through the unarmored underbellies of the ships, ripping into fuel lines and control surfaces. From the pastures, the docile, six-legged groks bellowed. Their shaggy hides split open along pre-designed seams to reveal interlocking plates of biological armor. Their heads lowered, and with the force of living battering rams, they charged the first wave of panicked Ravager warriors stumbling from a crashed lander. The smaller, goat-like creatures, the Capras, became living nightmares. They swarmed over a Ravager assault walker, their saliva, a potent acid, dissolving armor plating and hydraulic joints. The walker staggered, then collapsed, its legs eaten away from beneath it. On the bridge of the World Breaker, Vexter stared at the chaotic tactical display in stunned disbelief. His comms were flooded with the screams of his dying soldiers. "They're coming out of the ground. The plants are shooting at us. Those farm machines are tearing us apart. Retreat, retreat." Every report was more insane than the last. Farmers. This wasn't a farm. It was a goddamn fortress. An ecological death trap crewed by ghosts. He watched in horror as the main energy weapon from the silo fired, a blinding lance of pure power that speared clean through a Ravager cruiser in low orbit, causing it to detonate in a silent, spectacular flash. Vexter's arrogance shattered, replaced by a cold, searing fury. He had been played, humiliated. The pathetic, weeping woman on the comm was a phantom, a lie designed to lure him into this perfectly prepared abattoir. "All ships," he roared, his voice cracking with rage. "Concentrate fire on that central silo, all warriors to the surface. I want that colony burned. I want their commander's head. I don't care what ITTAKS, level everything." His pride, wounded and burning, would not allow for retreat. He had stepped into a garden expecting to trample the flowers. Instead, he found it full of thorns and poison, and now he was bleeding. He would not run. He would burn the whole damn garden to the ground. The Valley of New Eden became a canvas of controlled destruction. From her command center, Maria Santos conducted her symphony. The terrified screams of the Ravagers over their open comms were the percussion, the roar of plasma fire the brass, and the steady, rhythmic reports from her people were the string section holding it all together. "Tommy, they're concentrating fire on the silo." Maria's voice was a sharp, clear instrument cutting through the noise. "Give them a new target. Let's get the Gopher system online. Time to plow the south field." "Roger that, Colonel," Tommy's voice crackled back, laced with the adrenaline of battle. "Popping the daisies now." In the idyllic southern pastures, what appeared to be patches of large, white-petaled wildflowers suddenly flipped open like trapdoors. From subterranean housing, batteries of swarm missiles launched, streaking towards the Ravager ships that were foolishly focusing on the more obvious threat of the silo. The cruisers, caught completely by surprise, tried to redirect their point defense systems, but it was too late. The tiny, intelligent missiles overwhelmed their shields, detonating against hulls and engines. Another Ravager ship listed, venting atmosphere, its main power failing. "Sarah, Vexter is pushing his ground troops toward the river crossing," Maria said, her eyes tracking crimson icons on the holographic map. "Time to irrigate." "Understood, Colonel," Dr. Kim replied, her voice filled with a scientist's detached curiosity. "Initiating sudden flood protocol." The placid, meandering river that cut through the valley suddenly changed. Far upstream, a section of the canyon wall, which was in fact a massive, camouflaged dam gate, slid open. A contained torrent of water, held in reserve for this exact purpose, surged downstream. The Ravager assault walkers and armored transports, bogged down in the riverbed, were swamped by the flash flood. Vehicles were overturned, and warriors in heavy armor were swept away by the churning, muddy water. "All section leaders," Maria broadcast, "the enemy is disorganized. They're caught between the scarecrows and the river. It's time to weed the garden. Execute Phase 3, the tilling. Funnel them into the fungal groves." On the ground, the colonists' stern soldiers acted as one. Firing from concealed positions behind reinforced fence lines and inside armored barns, they drove the surviving Ravagers back. The Scarecrow mechs advanced relentlessly, their heavy cannons tearing through Ravager ranks. The invaders, broken and terrified, fled from the open fields into the only available cover, the dark, misty fungal groves on the valley slopes. They thought they had found sanctuary, they had found the larder. The moment they entered the groves, the air thickened with soporific spores released from the giant mushrooms. Ravagers staggered, their movements becoming sluggish. Bioluminescent fungi pulsed with disorienting light patterns. From the canopy above, creatures that looked like massive praying mantises, bioengineered by Sarah, dropped down on silent wings, their scythe-like claws dispatching the drugged invaders with terrifying efficiency. On the bridge of the World Breaker, Vexter watched his ground forces being systematically exterminated. His fleet was in tatters. Retreat was his only option. All ships, disengage, pull back to orbital assembly point Delta. Prepare for emergency jump, he shrieked, his voice raw with fury and desperation. The surviving ships turned to flee, but the cage was already closed. "Colonel," came the calm voice of the colonist in charge of Genix. "They're trying to run. Shall I lock the door?" "Lock it and throw away the key," Maria ordered. With a deep, grinding groan that shook the entire valley, the very landscape reconfigured itself. The towering rock formations that framed the valley entrance, previously dismissed by Ravager sensors as natural geology, split apart. Enormous shield emitters rose from within them, powering up and casting a shimmering, impenetrable dome of energy over the entire valley, cutting off any escape to orbit. New Eden was no longer a farm. It was a bottle, and the Ravagers were the flies trapped inside. Vexter saw the shield flicker into existence on his main view screen, a beautiful, deadly aurora sealing his doom. A primal scream of rage tore from his throat. He was trapped, beaten, humiliated by farmers. There was only one thing left, vengeance, however fleeting. "The command signature is coming from that central farmhouse," he bellowed to his bridge crew, what was left of them. "Ram it! If we die, she dies with us." The damaged World Breaker groaned as its remaining engines fired, pushing the massive vessel on a collision course with Maria's cottage. Maria watched the flagship descend. "He's coming for us. Everyone brace for impact." She stood her ground, her face calm. The ship never made it. As it descended, a final hidden defense activated. The entire field before her cottage, a field of simple green grass, rippled. 1,000 smaller energy projectors, disguised as blades of grass, fired in unison. Their combined beams formed a tractor-repulsor net that caught the massive cruiser, halting its descent a mere 1,000 meters from the ground. The ship hung there, suspended and helpless, its engines screaming against a force they could not overcome. Defeated, Vexter did the last thing a predator could do. He would face the one who had hunted him. He took his personal guard and launched a final, suicidal assault via teleporter, materializing in a crackle of energy in the field outside Maria's home. He expected to storm a bunker. Instead, he found Maria Santos standing on her porch, unarmed, a simple ceramic mug of what smelled like coffee steaming in her hand. The battle raged around them, but in this small circle, there was an impossible calm. "Vexter, I presume," Maria said, her voice devoid of any persona. It was simply the voice of a woman who was tired of war. Vexter raised his plasma rifle, his 4 eyes burning with hate. You witch, what is this place?" "This is New Eden," Maria said, taking a slow sip from her mug. "It's what happens when you try to raid a retirement community for former Federation Special Forces." Vexter faltered, the rifle wavering. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The tactics, the technology, the seamless coordination. "This isn't a fortress," Maria continued, her gaze sweeping over the valley of fire and death. "A fortress is a place you build to fight a war. This is a garden. We built it to live in peace. The fences are to keep the deer out, not to hold prisoners. The irrigation is to water the corn. The pest control, well, you've met the pest control." She set her mug down on the porch railing. "We came here because we were tired of fighting. All we wanted was to put something into the universe instead of taking things out of it. To cultivate, not conquer." "Then why?" Vexter snarled, gesturing at the carnage. "Why all this?" "Because the most important thing a gardener learns," Maria said, her eyes meeting his, becoming as hard as diamonds, "is how to deal with weeds. We made our garden so beautiful, so peaceful, that we knew predators like you would eventually come sniffing around. So we built the defenses into the ecosystem itself. We didn't build a wall to hide behind. We are the wall. This is humanity's new doctrine, Captain. We will live in peace. We will build our gardens. And if you try to burn them, we will salt the very earth you stand on with your ashes. We would rather spend a generation perfecting a new strain of tomato, but we will spend a century designing a new way to kill you if you force our hand. The choice has always been yours. Vexter stared at her, the full, crushing weight of his defeat landing on him. He hadn't just lost a battle. He had lost to a philosophy he couldn't even comprehend. He had brought war to a people who had perfected it, then set it aside like a rusty tool, only to pick it up again, sharper than ever, when he forced them to. He raised his rifle, a final, futile act of defiance. Before he could fire, a single, thorny vine thicker than his arm shot from the soil at his feet. It wrapped around his chest, constricted, and his final, enraged gasp was silenced forever. Maria picked up her mug, the morning's peace finally, truly restored. The gardeners could get back to work. The last fires of the battle died with the setting of the golden sun, leaving only the soft, rosy light of its companion to paint the valley in gentle shades of dusk. The shrill alarms and thunderous explosions had faded, replaced by the familiar sounds of New Eden, the rhythmic clang of tools, the lowing of the groks being herded back to their pastures, and the quiet hum of machinery being put away for the night. The cleanup was already well underway, conducted with the same quiet efficiency as the defense had been. The massive scarecrow mechs, their weapon pods retracted, folded themselves back into the unassuming shapes of harvesters, and were driven back to their sheds by Tommy Chen, who patted one on its armored flank like a favored beast of burden. The great energy dish of the silo slid silently back behind its rustic panels. The plasma cannons masquerading as irrigation systems retracted, once again looking like nothing more than simple farm equipment. In her lab, Dr. Kim monitored her creations as they settled. The steel-strong vines coiled back into the earth, and the carnivorous flowers turned their heads to the fading light, becoming simple blossoms once more. The wreckage of Ravager ships was being methodically disassembled by scavenger drones, their alloys destined to become fence posts and spare parts. In this garden, nothing was wasted. The story ended where it had begun, with Maria Santos on her knees in her personal garden. A stray plasma blast from Vexter's dying flagship had scorched a row of her prized Terran cucumbers. With the patient hands of a true gardener, she gently pruned the burnt leaves, checking the health of the surviving vines. The soil was still warm. Her fingers were smudged with dirt, but her mind was elsewhere. A small, flexible datapad, no thicker than a leaf, lay half-hidden by a cabbage. On its dark screen, lines of text scrolled as she dictated in a subvocal whisper. After action report, Operation Iron Harvest. Threat, Ravager Fleet Vexter commanding. Status, threat neutralized. Enemy losses total. New Eden casualties, 0. Structural damage, minimal within acceptable parameters. Ammunition and resource expenditure, cataloged in Appendix A requesting standard resupply via covert channels. She paused her dictation, her fingers finding a tiny, new cucumber beginning to form on a healthy part of the vine. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. Addendum, she whispered to the datapad. Effectiveness of integrated biomechanical defense protocols exceeded all projections. The garden proved resilient. She switched off the device and tucked it into her pocket, her focus returning completely to the earth. She patted the soil around the base of the plant, stood and stretched her back, gazing out over her valley. The dome shield was down, the sky above clear and dusted with the first stars of evening. The lights of the cottages flickered on, warm and inviting. It was a perfect picture of peace, a peace that had been earned not with a great conquest, but with a simple, unyielding refusal to be uprooted. New Eden was quiet. It was a garden and it was a fortress. It was a promise and it was a warning. And under the watchful eyes of its gardeners, it was ready for a long and peaceful harvest. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.